you're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a poor little me.
Do you feel it?
Yes, we do.
A worldwide awakening is upon us. Welcome to the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Where we explore topics such as UFOs, aliens, banned medical cures, as well as classified secret knowledge. Come question your holographic existence. Share experiences from the other side. This is a show that will expand your mind as we decrypt the symbolic messages locked away deep within your DNA. And now, your guides for this magical journey. The hosts of the Universal Consciousness Show, Avi Nast and Diana Seraphim.
Hello, everybody. And yes, that includes you. And here we are again, another Monday with coffee in hand, ready to go. And you know how important it is to make sure you drink enough coffee. Think of it this way. Remember, the dinosaurs never drank coffee. And we all know how that story ended. So I don't take any chances. I'm going to make sure I have enough coffee and I am ready. So now you are listening to the show for the thinking global citizen. My name is Agi and I'm one of the hosts, and Diana, my co-host, is over in Germany. How are you, Diana?
I'm fine, thank you. Hello, everyone.
Okay, this is going to be good. And before I introduce the guest, I want to tell you how you can connect with us. You can visit at our website, that is universal-consciousness-show.com. We are on YouTube with the same name, Universal Consciousness Show, and please subscribe while you're there. And just click that red button, says subscribe on it, and when you do, there's another little button that comes up, and that is just a little black bell that is next to it. When you click that one, and that's important, then you will get notifications when there are new shows coming up. And for those of you that like to hear this show again, just go to the universal-consciousness-show.com website, and of course YouTube, and we are also both live and archived, of course, at the kcorradio.com website. And then we are also on Twitter, iTunes, TuneIn, Alexa, Facebook, and a few other places that we put it on. So you can find us out there. We're just about everywhere. If you are listening to the KCOR radio website right now, there is this wonderful feature. And see if you can find it. They changed the website now, so I'm a little confused about where it's at. And it's a donate button. If you like what you hear, we would love it if you also could show us your gratitude by supporting us a little bit to tell us that, yes, we are doing the right thing. And if you can't, that is perfectly right. We love you. We are glad you are here listening. Otherwise, it will be just us, and that wouldn't be any fun. So, now we are ready for the guest. And here we go. Her name is Sheryl Magdaleno. And we have a pearl with us here today.
Oh, sweetness.
Yes. Yeah. And yesterday, I was talking with her on the phone, trying to strategize a little bit about what we were going to talk on. And because she's so knowledgeable and she's done so much and can do so much, I figured it out. One show is not enough. We're going to have her come back. And but today we're going to talk about meditation and what that can do for you, and also her healing abilities. Sheryl walked away from a nursing career to allow herself to unfold into what she is today. Still, she has been a psychic healer since 1971. That's about right after the Dark Ages. And she's a clairvoyant, claircognizant, That's a term that I haven't heard a lot. And she's a clairsentient, a clairaudient, and an effective healer, a meditation teacher, and a practitioner of the old Hawaiian healing method, Ho'oponopono. And she's having the time of her life right now, doing what she came here to this ball of mud called Earth to do. And let's really listen close, because in my experience, meditation, first of all, can help to keep us healthy. And for most people, it is the gate to higher consciousness, where we can have downloads, knowledge, resources, and experiences and abilities that will blow you away if you understood it and practice it. So welcome to the show, Sherry.
Why, thank you.
Hello, Sherry.
Hello, Diana. How are you?
Yes, thank you so much for being with us today. Just to jump into the subject and not to waste too much time, could you please start by telling us what was the moment in your life, the turning point that brought you on this wonderful path? So how did it all begin for you?
For me, there was no other way of being but the spiritual path. So even being a very small child, I always knew that I could see things and know things and experience things very differently than how everyone in my closest circle, my family, could. And it made things odd and difficult. I would say things, and of course, people would respond either, you have a really good imagination, or no, I'm not seeing that. But I do attribute my never forgetting who I am to my grandmother. And I spent my summers with her. And of course, looking back, I really believe that she was probably experiencing those things too. But she would always remind me that God chose me to know these things, but not to tell everyone, because everyone doesn't understand. And but she really embraced who I was. And so I learned that she was at least the one person I never had to edit myself around. But I learned very quickly that many people were uncomfortable with the things that I knew and how I experienced the world. And so meditation especially became my escape. So before I even knew that it was a thing or that it actually had a name, that was my way of decompressing from the human experience and connecting with the authenticity of me. And so really communing with self is how I would recharge every day.
So you were just a little girl then, maybe 5 or 6 years old, when you started discovering that you thought different and you saw different things than other people did?
I'm willing to bet even before that, because that's about kindergarten age. So even before that time, I knew that I was different and that I saw things and experienced things very differently than everyone else.
Mm.
And would say things that would all of a sudden happen, and see people that no one else saw, or hear things that no one else could hear. And that was my usual daily experience.
Wow.
But as Agi said at the beginning, I also don't know so much about this gift that you have, claircognizant. What is that exactly?
So claircognizance is me being a conduit for divine knowledge. And so I know that my most authentic knowledge comes through me. And I am the colander for that information, the conduit. And so even now, I have nothing happening in my intellect. I don't think before I speak. And so the claircognizance comes through me. And so I'm driven completely by spirit when I speak. And it actually makes the human experience quite effortless that way. And I also know in my deepest knowing that there's nothing I can ever learn in a book or be taught that would supersede that knowledge.
Mm. Yeah, that could be kind of surprising when you actually more or less, I guess the term is that you are channeling yourself. That just whatever comes through, then it is there, and maybe you're just as surprised as everybody else of what you say sometimes, huh?
Right. And sometimes, of course, the human side of myself will get the best of me, and I'll be scared to say what it wants me to say. And so there becomes the battle, right? I try to stifle it or stop it from coming out. And I have done that. I've let my human side edit, like I said, edit in many relationships or friendships or situations. And spirit will always reprimand me for that in one way or another. And so I've learned to just allow myself to be in that surrender. The surrender is receiving and then gifting it out how it's supposed to be. And so I've known that that's my path. And so even when I was hiding and editing and being in medicine as a nurse and then functional medicine practitioner and case manager, I still very much allowed that to spice my work, though I couldn't fully be exposed because the human side of me always thought that it would discredit the education that I was hiding behind to work in that field.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you have been a healer since 1971,
Yes.
but you also were a nurse. While being a nurse, were you able to implement some of your healing abilities at the hospital? Maybe not telling anybody, but just kind of helping someone with intention or whatever you were doing there without telling anybody, or did you just kind of separate the two?
Well, absolutely. Everything that I do has to have that element. And I think that's why I was drawn to that field, because I could still be me in some aspect, but also do this thing. So, yes, very much so. And I would always get responses from my patients. Oh, you have such a magic touch. Or, I can't believe you just said that. That's absolutely right. And so learning, especially knowing the real reasons why people were ill, trying to ask them very specific questions to get them to admit it instead of me having to admit that I already knew. And so that became crafty, I guess, at best. But so, yes, definitely using that. And I think it made me a better practitioner for sure.
Did
But
that?
while you were working as a nurse, did it happen to you that you see people dying?
Yes, I have held space for people to cross over. Mm-hmm.
And could you see something special by their death?
Well, yes, them leaving their bodies. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we aren't our bodies. I'm sure you already are aware of
Yeah.
that. And
Yes.
we're not our intellects. And so that's what really the practice of meditation harmonizes those parts. But at the time of death, our authentic self, our infinite self, gets to shed that suit and transcend the human experience. So it's actually not a sad occurrence for most people that are ready to go. And so in that environment, most of those people are very ready to transcend their bodies.
Yeah, when that happened, let's say you were at the hospital, somebody just died about a minute and a half ago. When you saw them leaving the body, what did that look like?
It's light. And then the body just becomes lightless. I guess that's the best way for me to describe it. You can tell the exact moment that the spirit leaves the body, because the body then becomes nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people in the human experience revere the body, but that's not where the spirit is. The spirit is infinite and boundless. And so when that happens, and some of them stay in the space just for a little bit, to really, I want to say get their grounding, but really grounding is not what they're doing because they're ascending, but really just to experience the experience of death and then going to that place where they prepare for the next. It's a graduation, really, is what I refer to it always as a graduation. So a lot of times, as soon as they transcend the body, there's a complete energy of release, and everything lightens. Everything, like even the entire room becomes light. And it's actually a lovely experience when you're not in the intimate relationship of having a human experience with the one who's passing. Because, of course, for them, there's a great amount of angst because of the attachment, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I find this very peaceful to hear something like that. I will never get enough for hearing about near-death experience and out-of-body experiences, because this is so peaceful when you know that there's nothing bad happening.
Oh, no, for the most part, it's very beautiful. And even for the earthbound energies that I work with to help cross them over, they are in such a panic. They're not even really sure where they are or why no one's interacting with them. And so the first thing I do is inform them that what has happened and that you don't belong here anymore. And then they cross over quite easily. It's a beautiful experience because it removes all angst, all trouble, all pain and suffering.
When you communicate with someone that died just a little while ago, or they're confused, which most of them really are, because it's a new environment they've never been before that they can remember.
They're only confused if they're not ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for a huge percentage of people are not confused. I mean, spirits, a lot of them do cross quite quickly. But the smaller percentage is confused. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I was just wondering, if they had an understanding. And I also heard there is a saying out there that says, no one dies alone. There's always someone there to more or less receive them or guide them a little bit or help them point to the light and the tunnel or whatever they need to go to. Is that what you have?
It is very true. And so for the ones that I have more difficulty crossing over immediately, I will actually walk them to that light and show them who is waiting for them. And sometimes as soon as they know who's waiting for them, they go. But other times I actually have to get them acclimated to the light. So we, dip ourselves into the light. And for me, that's a very emotional experience for me, to be human and to be able to facilitate that, because that energy is far more phenomenal than, of course, this plane of existence. And so I knowing that I have to return after being there is quite intense. But the moment that happens, especially for those harder ones that I have to go right to that brink of the light to do it, I always get an immediate download, and it feels like a full body electric charge, and then I just pour tears. It's amazing. And I always believed as a small child that that's very much like burning karma. I am rewarded for that.
When you communicate with them in this process, how do you communicate? Are you out of your body? Do you see them visually, or are you more or less just thinking them through the process?
It's telepathically, so it's all happening in a higher plane of existence. And they're very dense. So the earthbound energy is far more dense than spirit. So you have to really help them by, I infuse them with light and my energy to elevate them to where I'm at so that we can cross them over. But for like example, the hardest one that I've had to do was a 14-year-old boy who died of cancer, and his mother, after he passed, was of course completely distraught and became an alcoholic. And so he was not crossing over. And he was completely bound to his mother. And in those spaces, when I'm called to cleanse or bless sacred spaces, I actually took him home with me. And so he spent 2 weeks here. It took 2 whole weeks to finally get him to cross over, to soften him enough that he would leave this plane of existence. And so it was difficult and very sad, but he did finally go. But he had to understand that that was also her path. And that's really what's hard for a lot of people in the human experience, right? They want to control everyone else's experience to make theirs better, but
yeah. And this is something that the lack of this understanding is what creates ghosts. Ghosts can hang around for hundreds of years. If they do not have that understanding, they don't know where to go.
That's very true. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, they're hanging around from traumatic death. They weren't prepared.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, we have the people that, even in old age, they did something in the past
that they feel
that the church tell them, oh, because you killed so-and-so, you are going to hell. So they are so scared of the death process that they, when they leave there, then chances are they might find themselves in a place like that. Could that be possible?
Oh, very true. And so that's where meditation comes in, because you don't allow the intellect to become the driver of your human experience. And so those people who, I call it, they've contracted amnesia, right? So they've made the agreement to be someone else's version of them. And so that becomes not their authentic self. And so, yeah, huge amount of confusion. Huge amount of, and that's exactly how I raised my kids too, Augie. I just said, if you're ever confused, you're not being authentically you, because your authentic you is never confused. And so that's even having the human experience.
That's interesting. I'm confused sometimes.
Oh, Augie, I doubt that. I find that hard to believe.
This is wonderful. I see now we have 1 minute left to the break, and this conversation went in a totally different direction than
it did.
I thought it would, and it was wonderful. I tell you, talking about things like this, it enlightens us on a whole different level than being just around our daily life. And when we come back, we're going to talk about solutions to some of this confusion and where we can get knowledge and even resources and downloads, because meditation is your gate to higher consciousness. So
absolutely.
We'll be back after the show with Sheryl Magdaleno, and stay right there. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Your weekly connection to the truth.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Share your knowledge by calling our hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Call now.
Worldwide callers find us on Skype at KCOR Radio. It's time to abandon your fear and question what you think you know.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
More awakening awaits.
After this, after this, after this, after this, after this, after this.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good, as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil. The question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington. Every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil doesn't want you to hear.
Are you ready to go?
It's showtime!
Here we go, world. You're listening to the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Broadcasting from the heart of Las Vegas, Nevada.
Your base is so large it has to draw most of its power from the nearby nuclear fusion plant.
The future of radio is here and now.
When you look to the stars, what do you see?
For this thing just to do what it did, there's nothing that we know of. Not drone aircraft, not anything that has this type of performance capability.
Saturdays at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Join Misha Johnston for Starseed Awakening. You'll hear first-hand accounts from Misha, as well as from an array of experienced guests, what it's like to be contacted by numerous extraterrestrial groups.
You know, I'm thinking that a lot of the terror and a lot of the fear that I was reacting with and the pain I was experiencing had nothing to do with anything that was being inflicted on me, and it was just sort of an accident of circumstance.
We'll explore the world of our shadow government and their involvement with black ops, such as My Labs, MK Ultra, and other trauma-based mind control projects.
And when I was pulled out of my motel room in the middle of the night to go out there, those of us that were taken out there were taken at gunpoint. And I think that it was to immediately impress upon us that we were being taken in a special way to a special place for a special operation.
Starseed Awakening with Misha Johnston. There's no missing time here, just illuminating conversation.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Starseed Awakening, Saturdays at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, only on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Going live in 3, 2, 1.
It's time, once again, to unravel the mysteries of the universe by connecting the dots to a higher consciousness. This is the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Now the world will begin hearing us.
Share your knowledge by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
It's as simple as that.
Find us on Twitter at KCOR Radio or use hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us on the live chat at KCORradio.com. Back to your enlightened hosts, Agi Nast and Diana Serafini.
Hello, and we are back with the Universal Consciousness Show talking with Sheryl Magdaleno. And before the break, we were talking about the process of physical expiration. I don't want to call it death necessarily, because nothing dies. There is only change. And she was explaining how she is able to help people pass over, and not just over, but also going home. This got really deep. And for those of you that joined us here at the bottom of the hour, you really missed out. You got to go back and listen to the first half of the show, because this first half of the show could change your life. And therefore, now we have talked about what's happened, and in some eyes, the problem. And now we're going to talk about solutions, talk about meditation. Meditation for most people is the gate to higher consciousness, where the magic is. Sherry, are you a magician?
No. So let me demystify meditation for you.
Okay.
I'm not a guru. I'm not an expert. I'm not a magician. I'm just walking this path with everyone else. So that's it.
Yeah.
But meditation, the best way I can describe it is communion with self. And the reason why it becomes so mystified and difficult for everyone is because to be in the human experience, it's exhausting and excruciating, and they avoid the self because from a very early age, they're taught who they should be. And that's when they begin the process of contracting amnesia. And so when they are left moments alone with themselves, their authentic self, it becomes even painful, physically painful, spiritually painful, emotionally painful. And they go into the self-avoidance behaviors, which I call time traveling, right? So that's allowing the intellect to take you to past events. I should have, I could have, I would have, and very specific scenarios, or time traveling to the future. I need to do this, constant goal orienting, or in a constant state of anticipation. And all of that is self-avoidance. Or you can be in full numbing behaviors, alcohol, drugs, sex, comfort eating, comfort buying, scrolling. People on social media, that's also a numbing behavior. All of it is self-avoidance, all of it. And so meditation becomes a way of life. It's living consciously. So when I teach meditation, especially the basic level mindfulness, that's my favorite level of all to teach, because without a good grasp on that, harmonizing your three parts, your intellect, your earth suit, and your soul, then all of those deeper practices that you will eventually crave, I promise you, because you're going to see how phenomenal you are, it would make those virtually impossible without having a good grasp on harmonizing your parts first. And so some people try to dive in right away to those deeper practices and then berate themselves for failing at it. And that's not it at all. You have to figure out why you don't like yourself. And it's because you're not being your authentic self.
Yeah, and it's so easy to fall into that because you know what the world expects of you, and you always want to meet expectations.
Right. And not even the world. I mean, it happens at such a young age. Your world is very small at that point. So, mom, dad, I want them to love me. How can I make them love me? Okay, I'll be this. And so for some, it happens so early.
Yeah.
And that begins the confusion of the human experience, the limited database of the intellect.
Yeah. And that's why I've been saying that meditation is usually the gate to higher consciousness, because I know I've been meditating since about 3 weeks before the beginning of time. And and this is something that there were times, especially after I came to the United States, there were a time there when I didn't do a lot of it because I was all caught up in business and, flying through. I mean, there was so much to do. I got buried in the day-to-day. But after I quit, especially after I quit flying, then I started studying the mind, and it all came back so quick.
Right.
You never lost it. It is there.
And it will for most people. And that's why I always say I help people remember who they are, because really that's all we ever do want, is to get back to self. And so when you give them the tools to do that, it's life altering.
Yeah. When you I know I've had experiences in meditation there, and you sit down and say, okay, I'll take a 20-minute here, and I come to, and it's been 3 hours.
Right.
Do you use a little alarm clock to set yourself so you don't lose the whole day when you go into meditation?
No, I always ask spirit to take me out of it when it's time. And so far I've been very lucky with that.
Yeah, that would probably be good.
You do lose a lot of time though. And because time is a human construct, of course.
Yeah.
So when you're in spirit, it's just a blink.
Yeah, it doesn't even, when you get into that deep state of mind where there are no thoughts, you're just you. Time doesn't exist there.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. What are some, now you're a nurse also, and what are some of the health benefits that we can really expect? This happens. What some things can you mention?
Well, the deep breathing in itself, just one deep conscious breath in, actually is like a light switch for the parasympathetic nervous system. And so I'm going to geek out on you now because you asked for it.
Hey, I'm a geek.
But the parasympathetic nervous system doesn't even usually turn on until the deepest levels of sleep. But for people who are chronically stressed, they're not achieving that even in sleep. So learning to deep breathe, even just one time in the day, it flips on the parasympathetic nervous system. And so what happens in that? That's the body's repair mode. So you get a shot of all of those beautiful feel-good chemicals that the body creates on their own, serotonin, oxytocin, and you feel phenomenal just from that own little pharmacy that exists in your brain. And then it slows the heart rate, it calms the body, it evens your vibration. And so that in itself is a huge component of the meditative state. But having that extra oxygen actually quiets the intellect as well, because the hypothalamus then receives the oxygen that it needs to become more quiet. But I love mentioning Sarah Lazar. She is a neuroscientist who did a study for her graduate thesis. And she has actually paired with Deepak Chopra of late. And her graduate thesis was originally going to be about yoga and the effects on the brain. And when she joined a class, she told the yogi what she was there for and what her purpose was. And he said, if you're really wondering what effects it has on the brain, you should actually take a mindfulness class, not yoga. And so she did. And she started studying people who were never meditating in their life, ever, ever, ever. And she had them doing, I believe it was just 10 minutes a day, and started noticing changes in the gray matter of the brain. So the gray matter of the brain is what makes the executive decisions, right? And so for those who have any background in medicine, the brain is not well understood by medicine. And when brain cells die, they don't regenerate. But the gray matter of the brain actually disintegrates with age. And so she started noticing that gray matter was actually improving in these people. So she took very long-term meditators and noticed that the gray matter in their brains was likened to those who were half their age. And so that was huge to make that discovery for the medical field and its relationship to meditation, that the brain was actually improving. And so brain function improving with meditation, right? Because how can that be when reading books and being educated is what's supposed to improve brain power? But they said actually shutting off the intellect is what actually improves brain power. So that was huge for the meditation community. And so I love mentioning that because that's probably the most mind-blowing thing for the people that I had to teach at the clinic as a case manager, because it was part of their patient plans. And so they weren't making the choice to be taught meditation. So very adverse to the idea. But when I would give them facts like that, of course, it made it way easier. Okay, I'll sit here and do what she tells me to do. And then it ended up being life altering for them. So, but those factuals are super important for people to realize, because disease cannot exist in an oxygenated earth suit, and nor can it exist in a full light body. And meditation does both of those things.
Yeah, meditation also improves the aura, And most diseases, unless it's poisons and stuff that you ingest, most diseases, they show up in the bioelectromagnetic field before they show up in the physical body.
Right.
And there's some research with Kirlian photography that proves this. If we are able to get rid of it while it is only in the bioelectromagnetic field or the aura, it never enters the body. And meditation can actually help us do that.
Isn't that phenomenal?
Yeah.
And why wouldn't everyone do it? Do you know why, Augie?
I don't know.
Because they are taught to loathe themselves. And they're taught to fear their authentic self. So they have to constantly portray this version of themselves that is not them to earn their worth and love. And so you have to teach people that that was a lie.
Yeah, religion.
Well, not only religion, but like I said, in the family unit, I want my mom to actually love me. So how can I be who she wants me to be so that she will love me? And it happens lifelong for people like that. Think about it. If you're a child, I'm going to do this so that you love me. And now I'm an adult in an intimate relationship, and I will completely be your version of me so that you love me. And it happens again and again and again. And it's usually the repeating pattern that shows up for everyone.
Yeah,
and so you have to get them out of that cycle.
But that might be just a symptom, though. I am not giving up on my last comment, because if your mom was taught spiritual love instead of religious dogma, you wouldn't have to worry about being loved.
Well, there's some people who have zero religion. They still do that. But you're right. It's archaic.
Yeah.
It's ancient. So it's not about blaming mom or dad. There's no blame. You just have to say, I'm breaking the cycle and I am going to love me. And so that begins with communing with self and to actually figure out who you are. And only meditation can do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But the most people that they are never they are not familiar with meditation. When they try to start that, they become aggressive because they are meeting their thoughts and they cannot stand it. I had this issue with my mom and with other people from my family, because I am a meditator and I know what I did with meditation. And when I try to convince them, they are becoming so aggressive. They cannot stay there 5 minutes without thinking, or is there a main rule that you can tell somebody to do and to get into meditation and don't be scared?
Okay, so I do not teach basic level by telling someone to sit and still their mind. No one would ever be successful that way. That's literally, that's an impossibility. So they have to first be aware of the voice that's in their head. Mm-hmm. And so then I ask them, that voice that's in your head, do you think it's you? And if they say yes, then I say, if it's you in your head, who's listening? You can't be both.
Good question.
And so when they sit in that, it becomes confronting, but they really have to look at that. And so that's the seed that I plant for all newcomers. Mm-hmm. And most of the people that come to me are already ready to say, no, I have a feeling this isn't me in my head, which is beautiful, because that's the realization that brought them to meditation. But some people do happen to come because they've been told by their doctors, you need this or you're going to be very sick. And so they come to me and they still are fully invested in the idea that that voice in their head is them, that they're conversing with themselves, and it's not them. So I do this burning ceremony, which has been proven to be very powerful. I've been doing it for more than a decade, where I have them actually write down the things that are happening in their head. What does that voice usually say to you? And this usually happens in moments when you're left alone with you. So when you're waiting, and I'd be willing to bet that humans spend a good third of their life waiting. We're always waiting at red lights, checkout lines, pumping our gas. I mean, you name it, we're always waiting somewhere. And that's when people self-avoid. So what's happening in your head? Are you time traveling to the past, to the future? Maybe both. What's happening in your head? And so I have them bring an awareness to that, the time element of what they're doing. And then read that back to yourself. And whose voice does that sound like?
Mm-hmm.
And for some, it sounds like a chorus of many. And so this is what happens. We save that voice literally from the time you're conceived. You're saving stuff in that database. And that becomes the human part of you, this voice in your head. But it's a very dysfunctional way that we save it. Just like a calculator solves number problems, the human intellect is meant to solve human problems, but it's just a tool. It's meant to help us communicate and navigate this space of existence. But what happens is that it becomes the programming that people base their entire existence off of. But it's very limited. It doesn't know the future self, and it really doesn't know the authentic self. And so that's why life becomes so confusing, because they're trying to find answers that don't exist in the intellect. So it's just like the uber religious saying, what would Jesus do? Really what they're saying is, what would mom do? What would dad do? What would my spouse do? Because they're trying to access someone else's judgment that's outside of themselves.
Yep.
And so really that's the most important exercise for them, is to try to figure out whose voice they're hearing. And then we burn it. We destroy the paper, because just the physical act of destroying those thoughts shows you how much power they have over you. And so I give them, literally, that's the first homework that they have from that very first class that I teach them, is when you start letting the intellect take the driver's seat, write it down and torch it. And if you can't burn it because there's a sprinkler system, tear it up. Flush it down the toilet if you have a good septic system.
Yeah.
Find a way to destroy it, because it's not you. You are the ever infinite, never changing observer. You are just the experiencer of the human experience. And so anything that is changing is not you. The physical body is ever changing. It's not you.
Yep.
The intellect, even the emotions are not you. The environment is not you. And so many people are invested in all of that that's removed from the self, that is meant to be a tool to help us exist here. And it disharmonizes the experience, because they're not allowing the authentic part of them to be in the driver's seat. That was a lot of talking.
That makes sense. Yeah.
That was amazing. Really. This makes so much sense. Yeah.
Oh, good. Good.
And for people that meditate, I see now we got about 6 minutes left of the show. For people that meditate, let's say first they got to learn how to get rid of the unwanted thoughts in their head. And
absolutely.
Gosh, I run into people from time to time that meditate for 20 years and they still don't know how to do that. So something's wrong. And what can they expect in form of connection to information and spiritual knowledge?
I mean, you should go into it with no expectation, Augie. I mean, the whole idea if you're going to sit and be still, it's to be receptive. And that's really what surrender is. Surrender, we have learned in the human experience, is about being defenseless and weak. And so when they hear surrender, right away, they want to go into that bracing, that human bracing behavior, like holding their breath. And what does this mean? And fear. But I say, no, surrender is actually allowing yourself to be 100% receptive to everything that is meant for you.
Yeah.
How beautiful is that?
Oh, it's wonderful.
So you go into it with zero expectation, and then you receive everything you need and desire.
Yeah. There you go. We got 4 minutes left of the show. For right now, tell us where people can get a hold of you and your healing. We never really got into that much, but you do some very effective healing practices. Maybe tell us where they can find your website, your email, and...
My website actually has a link to email and my number. So that's divinity in all one word .me. That's my website. DIVINITY me. In IN.ME. Me. And that's really what I teach people, the divinity in them, remembering who they
Yeah.
are. So that's always my goal. That's always my goal.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And time is ticking down on us. If you can talk to the whole world right now and the world would listen, what would you tell them?
You are love. You are love. Simple.
Mm.
You are nothing more, nothing less. You are absolute love.
Mm.
And in that state of existence, there is no angst. It's just complete joy. And this is the love that transcends emotion. I mean, people need to know that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember about a year before Albert Einstein died, he said in an interview somewhere that, paraphrased here, that I have studied the universe more than most people, he said, and I have found that the whole universe is made from the vibration of love.
Yes, and I always believed it to be the true alchemy. There is no sorcerer's stone. It's love.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What is next for you now, Sherry?
Honestly, craniosacral therapy. I give myself Mondays off. So this is my self-love day. I always recharge from my prior week, and I do beautiful things like get massages and craniosacral therapy and do breath work. So, and get to talk to beautiful, awakened folks like yourself. So what a blessing.
Yeah. That sounds wonderful. And we got to take time for ourselves. And that is the hard one for many of us. We get all caught up in our work. And there I see we are down to the end of the show. So I thank you very much, Sherry, for being with us. Sheryl Magdaleno spent the whole hour with us explaining her part of the universe. And I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For all of you out there in Radio Land, take care of each other. Until next time.
This has been the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Your weekly guide to a deeper understanding of the all that we are.
Well, in a few years, it will be a matter of common sense to very many people that they're one with the universe. It'll be so simple.
Live Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, hosts, or their guests, please visit universal-consciousness-show.com. That's universal-consciousness-show.com. Remember, there's a shift coming, a new earthly paradigm, a shift to universal consciousness.
Universal Consciousness.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.